You are listening to Agri Culture, a podcast that aims to explore the stories of the people that make up our agricultural industry and culture of farming in Scotland and beyond. I'm Mary Jane Laurie, and on today's episode...
But for me, it's never about, hitting a certain number of followers or, hitting that sort of goal. I mean, as much as it's fantastic and I appreciate every single follow I get, it's more about just being able to share the story and allow people onto the farm and hopefully just try and educate and inspire that next generation into agriculture.
Today I'm joined by Nicola Wordie, who is an award-winning livestock farmer and social media creator from Aberdeenshire. She farms in partnership with her dad on a mixed upland sheep and beef farm and shares her day-to-day farming life across her social media platforms and a YouTube channel under the name Livestock FarmHER. Her success in content creation recently led her to win the Fordyce Maxwell Award for Agricultural Communications. Hi Nicola, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So for anyone who hasn't come across you before, can you tell us a little bit about your farm and what a typical day looks like for you?
Yeah, so we are currently farming in the northeast of Scotland. Very lucky to be born and raised on this farm here that my grandfather bought back in the 1950s. It's roughly 1,400 acres that we're farming as an upland unit, all in one block, and we have got roughly 240 suckler cows which calve half spring and half autumn, and then we're running about 1,000 breeding ewes as well, which we have recently turned to indoor lambing.
Gosh, so you're literally busy all year then.
Yeah, there's always something going on.
I think that's the thing with having a split calving as well, isn't it? Like you get through the spring rush of lambing and calving and then you're onto silage and you think, oh, wind down for the winter. But you're like, no, let's do an autumn calving as well.
Definitely, that's it. I know we're only a couple of weeks off really getting into the thick of autumn calving again, and it just feels like we've only just finished.
Why do you have two separate calvings? Is that for market purposes?
The main reason for us is to split the workload, but also for income.
Okay.
So it splits the income coming in twice a year, which is really important for us. Sort of through that sort of April to June period when there's not really a lot coming in when the lambs are just being born. So we sell our spring calves in February, and that gives us a top up, and then we start selling lambs round about that end of May, June time. The Balklam will start going sort of June, July, and that'll see us through, and then start selling calves again September.
And you mentioned there that you've made a move to indoor lambing. What was the reason behind that?
Yeah, so predominantly that was because of the weather.
Okay.
So we lamb sort of sharpish for where we farm here in the northeast of Scotland. So we're lambing my early batch on the first few days of March.
Okay.
And then my main batch, they lamb sort of end of March. So we were losing too many lambs to snow because, as we know, the seasons are all kind of out of sync now. Yeah. So, we could have been going around picking up 50 lambs dead a night just because of the weather, which was soul destroying. It's hard mentally, but also financially, it doesn't add up. We made the move, but the whole point of making the move as well was to make sure that we were going to be able to use the new shed sort of 12 months a year to make it worthwhile, because it was obviously such a huge investment. So that's been a big game changer for us for sure.
Yeah, and it sounds like you farm with your father, is that correct?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Myself and Dad have just gone into partnership. Yeah.
So it sounds like you're quite, willing to adapt, and your dad's obviously quite willing to adapt to things that he maybe did differently, 20 years ago. Now you're in the business. It sounds like you're both, willing to try new things.
Definitely. I've been very fortunate growing up with two incredible parents that, gave us every opportunity going and encouraged us to do everything we could. And then since I had an interest coming back home to the farm, Dad was always very encouraging and was very willing to give me some responsibility and sort of let me find my feet in the different enterprises, etc. So, yeah, I'm very grateful to him that he has been so supportive.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and it's nice to hear that, coming back to the family farm, that you get the opportunities to try new things. And you mentioned that you went off the farm for a bit. Were you studying?
Yeah, so I left school after fifth year, and I went to Craibston to do a HND in agriculture. got my 2 years there, and then I actually went out to New Zealand for 3 months, where I sort of did all sorts. I just did sort of like a work to stay basis, helped out on different dairies and bull fattening farms, which is totally different to what we farm here. But it was a fantastic opportunity, and at the time it was hard leaving home. I'm very much a home bird and enjoy the comforts of being here, but no, I'm really, really glad I got the opportunity and the experience to do that when I did.
Yeah, and it sounds like agriculture is something you've always wanted to do. So even when you're traveling, you're farming.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. My husband and I, we went on honeymoon there last year, and we went back to New Zealand, and it was all farming related.
Is he from a farming family as well, or is he being dragged around?
He is. No,
Okay.
he's from a farming family, so he gets it too.
Okay, it's not quite so bad. He was probably thinking, what have I done? Just a lifetime of farm tour holidays. I think you learn so much from different cultures, even if it's not the same farm type that you've got at home. There's always something you can take away, I think, isn't there?
Definitely. And just like being able to understand their challenges, across the other side of the world, comparing them to here, and just, hearing about markets and that over there as well, how different it can be.
Yeah. And so at some point while you've been farming, you decided to pick up a camera and start recording. What point did you think that was something you wanted to do?
Yeah, so I think, again, it kind of started from a young age. So my mum and dad were always very heavily involved with going into schools and taking what's called classroom on wheels into schools and encouraging youngsters to learn a bit about where their food comes from and learn, different crops and how it goes from the field to end up on your plate kind of thing. And they've always had that sort of drive to educate and inspire, I guess, the next generation. And so I've seen that firsthand. So when I came back home, I sort of felt it was in that time period of when sort of COVID hit and farmers were kind of getting a wee bit of blame for things. And it just sort of felt like, if I'm here doing the job anyway, what's the problem with me just setting my phone up and, taking a video, leaving it to just sit and play and sort of sharing the story. As I say, I've always had that drive to share and sort of give an insight into what really happens on a true working farm. So with me being there every day, being able to share it, it just felt like the obvious thing to do for me.
Was there any point where you started sharing your story on the farm that made you nervous about, sharing what you were doing, like in case you were opening yourself up to, comments or speculation from members of the public that maybe didn't fully understand what you'd be saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And believe it or not, I'm actually a very shy person. So I find it's quite nice for me because it's not live. It's all done sort of in my own space, in my sort of happy place. And if something goes wrong, I can just re-record it. It's fine. So yeah, I am very shy, but there's probably at the start, I was very nervous to put myself out there. And to start with, for a while, I didn't actually put myself in front of the camera. I would just sort of take videos of the stock or, do some voiceovers and that sort of thing, purely because I was shy and nervous to put myself out there, which seems absolutely crazy now. But I suppose it's because you're just sort of launching into that sort of whole new world. And it's, as much as it is a fantastic opportunity, it also opens you up to a whole can of worms in terms of people's opinions, and people can, as we know, voice their opinions a lot more behind a screen.
Yes.
So it has definitely thrown some challenges, shall we say, but on the whole, I am incredibly lucky that a lot of the people that follow and engage with my content are incredibly supportive.
So for anyone that hasn't seen your Livestock FarmHER socials, you're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, is that correct?
And Facebook,
Facebook. So what would be the typical sort of content that you started putting out versus what you're putting out now? You mentioned earlier it was just videos at the start without you in them. What has changed now? What can people expect from your socials?
So every day I'll share something. I try and share as much of my day as possible.
Okay.
At the moment, it's still very farming focused and just sharing, like just tasks that I got up to. So in the winter time, I do all the feeding of the cattle that are inside, and now the sheep as well when they come inside. So it's very routine. But I think a lot of people enjoy that sort of regular content that they can sort of get connected with and understand it a bit better. Whereas like, so just now we're obviously going through lambs at the moment. So every week I'll be sending away lambs going off to the abattoir. Just something different. Every day is very different. And now that we're approaching calving, that's obviously going to, hopefully I'll be able to share a lot more about what that looks like and how we're getting on with that. So yeah, every day is very different, but I try and keep it as engaging as possible.
Are a lot of your viewers farmers, do you think? From the comments you get, do you think they're mostly farmers, or are they people, just members of the public that are interested?
So I'm very fortunate as well. I was shortlisted for a competition in Countryfile, and that was aired back in 2021, I think it was. Okay. So that brought in a whole different sort of audience in itself, and that was a lot more general public, which I like the balance of both. You get both farming and general public, because the general public, you're able to sort of, share what we're doing, why we're doing it, give a bit of an explanation, and allow them onto a farm, which a lot of people will never have the opportunity to do that. And then from the farming side of things, it's really good for me because it's, it gives me a chance to speak to other farmers, discuss the problems that we're facing, but also learn from others, and hopefully have that bit of like knowledge exchange. So for me, I really enjoy both aspects of it. And I would say most of my following is pretty 50-50 on the likes of Facebook and Instagram. YouTube, I would say it's probably more farmers.
Yeah, I've got three sons, and my eldest is 11, and I tend not to let them have too much screen time. But the eldest is dead into farming, so his go-to is watching YouTube videos like yours, and Sheep Game and Crawford's Farm. He just loves watching what you guys are all up to, and I think there's something really wholesome about that. It's just sharing everyday stories, and as a farmer's son, he's learning about it. But I can see for other children that are not from a farming background how they can learn loads from it as well, and adults as well, not just children. But that sort of easy watching content which is educational without being too technical as well, I think is it's a great thing that you're putting out there. And you mentioned there your Countryfile shortlist. Did you have a huge surge of new followers when that went out, and was that a bit daunting?
Yeah, it was. So because it happened quite quickly after I started, it was all within the first year. And I didn't know about the nomination at all until it was announced. And they came up and did some filming, and that was fine. Spoke to Adam and showed him around the farm, and just had a lovely day just chatting and actually, just speaking about farming, his farm, our farm, that sort of thing. So it was really good. And then when it did air, I think I had something like, I think it was about 1,400 followers or something at this point. And then it shot up to about 8,000 just after the first program was aired. And I remember just thinking, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like, how many people have we gained just in such a short space of time? But like, for me, it's never about, hitting a certain number of followers or hitting that sort of goal. I mean, as much as it's fantastic and I appreciate every single follow I get, it's more about just being able to share the story and allow people onto the farm, and hopefully just try and educate and inspire that next generation into agriculture.
Has there been any sort of surprises from the response that you got from social media?
There's been, I didn't really expect it to grow like it did, to be fair. As I say, I just sort of had this passion to share what we were doing and why we were doing it, and try and give farmers a bit of a better light to the general public, and just try and bridge that gap a wee bit between the consumer and the producer. So I never really thought much about how far it would go. I thought I would get maybe a few family members, a few friends, a few like friends of friends, that would be about it. So when it did start to escalate and grow, and it's now become what it has, it still blows my mind, and I'm still so grateful for the opportunities that it does bring as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Have you ever posted anything that you think has given you an unexpected response or started a debate online that you think, oh gosh, I wish I hadn't said that? Or has it been fairly plain sailing?
It's funny actually, because the ones that you think might engage with people more don't tend to. It's the ones that you sort of I wouldn't say don't think much about, but you sort of, it's just like routine posting. And then one of them will just hit an algorithm and then all of a sudden it'll just fly. I remember I had one last year at lambing time, and I sort of did a reel on Instagram of this yow. She'd had a set of three, but I could see that one of the lambs was coming tail first. She'd lambed the first one, went to help her with the second one, and I explained that, and then I sort of explained that she would now go into a pen and would bond with all three lambs, etc. Would make sure that they were all fed properly, and it's got something like 3.5 million views or something.
Wow.
Which to me it was just like, it's just another yow lambing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to a lot of people, it's they don't see that.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's what we take for granted. For a lot of people, it's new and it's exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely those posts that you don't really think much about tend to be the ones that take off.
And you've obviously got to be quite creative when you're, a social media, I don't know whether you call yourself a creator or an influencer or whatever term you want to use. You've got to create something that people want to watch. So visually, you've got to make it interesting. And then, you add your voiceovers and audio as required. Do you find yourself going about the farm thinking about what will make a nice shot for the videos?
Definitely. It's like a job in itself almost. You're always sort of second guessing, and before I start doing a job, I'll always sort of plan out the video in my head of how I want it to look.
Yeah.
Thinking about, different things that I want to include, and different things that I like, different angles and just different perspectives, I suppose. But that's only come with experience though, because when I first started doing it, particularly YouTube, it was very much like I just set my phone up and I sort of worked away. And then when you're editing it and you look back, you think, oh, I should have done this, or I should have said this, or I should maybe have changed it up a bit, just to make it a bit more engaging. And now you sort of find yourself, I am trying to change up the angles, or, set my phone up differently, or try and explain something as I'm doing it, as opposed to explaining it and then doing it.
Yeah.
So there's always little tweaks to be made. But I do feel like the more you do it, I suppose the easier it becomes too.
Yeah, and I guess you've been doing it for a few years now, so you're doing the same jobs. Farming is obviously cyclical, isn't it? You're doing the same job season after season. So I guess in your head you're probably thinking, well, last year when I did a lambing video, I did it from this angle. Maybe we should go from a different part of the shed, or maybe we should have an overhead shot or whatever. And do you end up roping in your husband and your dad to help filming, or do they stay well clear?
Dad tends to stay quite clear. Okay. He does hold the phone occasionally, but he's quite happy just to not be involved.
Yeah,
and I think my husband Davey would be the same, but sometimes it just gets forced upon him.
Yeah, yeah, I can understand. They're probably like, can we just get on with it? But yeah. I'm guessing it's potential to be a decent bit of income for you in addition to the farm income as well. We all know social media influencers, if we want to use that term, who then go on to monetize what you're doing. So it has that potential to give you something interesting in your future.
Definitely. And I think that was sort of the incentive to start YouTube, because it's monetized, whereas at the moment for me, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, none of that is.
Yeah. Okay.
It's easier to put stuff on there because it's shorter snippets, it's quicker. There's not really a lot of editing involved. Mm-hmm. But for the likes of YouTube, you're putting more effort in, so it's quite nice to get that reward back.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still very much at the bottom end of the scale, in terms of the quality, the quantity, and therefore the money in return. But it's something, it helps. It makes the editing that wee bit slightly easier.
Yeah, I think like all these things, the amount of effort you put in. So a lot of people think, oh, it's all right for these influencers and YouTubers making all this money, but it's a lot of work from what I understand.
Definitely.
It's not my area of expertise, but you can see the videos and content that does well, how hard someone has worked on that. if you're going to give advice to someone younger, or even your younger self starting out, thinking about going into YouTube or doing sharing their own farming experiences on social media, what advice would you give them?
Definitely just start. Just
Okay.
make a start. Don't be scared. Put your phone up, take the videos, take as much as you can. I know I sometimes need to stick to that advice myself, because I as I say, because I am shy, I do sort of tend to take the easier route sometimes and not put myself out there as much as I maybe should. But I would say, yeah, just back yourself. That's your biggest thing, is just back yourself, have confidence in yourself and what you're doing, and know that you have a voice, you have a story to be told, and people want to hear it.
And it doesn't need to be expensive, from what I understand.
No.
It sounds like you're filming most of your content just with your phone.
All on my phone, yeah. I don't
Right,
have
okay.
anything else. I just use my phone, yeah.
And you have some drone footage on some of or it looks like drone footage on some of your videos. Have you got a drone as well?
Yeah, I've got a drone, which, again, I should probably take out more, but the weather is not always favourable.
Yeah.
But yeah, try and take out the drone as and when I can.
Yeah.
As well.
I think that technology advancing has just added a whole other level to what you can produce, especially in a farming landscape. It's so fascinating to put the drone up above your farm and really see it
Definitely.
from a different angle, especially when you're working with livestock in a field or machinery on a big, like silage or harvest time. It can be
Absolutely.
really interesting. You mentioned earlier as well your country file shortlisting, but also a big congratulations to you on recently winning the Fordyce Maxwell Agriculture Communications Award. That's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
What did that recognition mean to you?
It was a huge honour. Again, I didn't realise that I'd been nominated, but to find out that you've been nominated by, fellow peers, and then to go on and win it, it was I felt hugely honoured. I still do. And I'm so grateful for people seeing something in what I do in the content, enjoying it, and backing me, because that's that's what it's all about. I enjoy doing it, I enjoy sharing it, but it's lovely to hear that people enjoy receiving it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand your farming business with your dad has also had some success in winning Sheep Farmer of the Year at the British Farming Awards. That's fantastic. How did that come about?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was another big shock.
Yeah, that's a big award.
Yeah, so we knew that we had been shortlisted, and we decided we would go down to Birmingham. We had the interview over Teams, and it went really well. I just shared the story, shared what we got up to, and Dad was with me as well, and it went really well. So we felt quite good, but never did I think that we would go on and win, because obviously we were up against other fantastic nominees. And when you head down there and you enter the room, the nerves start to hit, and then you start to see the reel of the pictures and stuff, and the sort of intro video that they've done, and then it starts to get really real. And then hearing your name announced, I was in shock. I was in absolute shock, and thank goodness for Dad, because afterwards, when they did the interview, I wasn't able to speak because I was in so much shock. I just did not think that we would come home with it. And then to come home with it, it was just an incredible achievement, and I'm so honoured to have been able to achieve that with my dad.
Yeah.
And to do it together it's been fantastic. Yeah.
What do you think it was about your farming business that the judges particularly liked?
They said in the spiel after they'd announced it that it was because Dad and I work so well together, and he's always been so encouraging of me coming forward into the business, and allowing me to have my say and work with him, obviously, and just be able to grow into the person that I am today, but also allow the business to keep growing and developing and moving forward. I think that's been a big thing for us. And as I say, I'm very grateful to Dad for allowing that to happen.
It sounds like you've got a really lovely working relationship with them, and that's always nice to hear. Families working well together, because that's not always the case. So yeah, I'm sure you have your moments where disagreements over how to do things, but but what a lovely moment to share together. Have you noticed that attitudes towards farming have been changing in recent years, through your use of social media and, the awards that you've been winning and going to these ceremonies? Have you picked up on a change in public perception of farming?
Yeah, I do think there is a lot more people starting to maybe realize and appreciate just how much goes on in the background of farming.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like it was always there to a certain degree, and certain people, did always appreciate the work that went on behind the scenes. But I think that is only starting to get better.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like we went through a wee phase where that sort of gap between the consumer and the producer was starting to get bigger and bigger. Whereas I feel like now it is maybe starting to close slightly. There is certain areas there's still a long way to go, but I do feel like the general public is more engaging and more appreciative of the long hours, the hard work, the challenging times with the financial side of things, being able to not being able to know what your product's going to be worth at the end of the line is a huge thing. And I think people are maybe starting to realize that, farming is very tricky and it's
Yeah.
very on the line.
Yeah, I think social media has had a big part to play in that. And, campaigns like
Definitely.
Farm24 that encourage farmers to share what they're doing for a full 24 hours. It just highlights to the public how hard it can be, and rewarding. Obviously, there's lots of positives as
Definitely.
well, but just highlights the amount of work that goes into producing food in this country. Do you think that
Absolutely.
farmers going forward will be using social media more and more? Your everyday farmer that maybe isn't currently engaging with social media. Do you think farmers of the future, your generation, will all be using it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it is turning more to that. For even just, for asking people for advice, checking in, it's all online now. It's all through social media, through websites, through meetings online, that sort of thing. So yeah, I definitely think it's going to keep growing from like sharing your story. I don't like the word influencer, but
No.
that sort of from a farmer just putting out some videos. I do think companies see that as a big opportunity for them too,
Yeah.
to get different products out there, try new things, and get honest reviews on it. So I do think it is only going to grow further. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about some big highs that you've had in your life and your career as a farmer. How do you keep motivated in the more difficult days? The days that like difficult lambings or things that have happened. What do you do to keep motivated?
So I do use my social media a lot for sharing a lot, maybe too much, of the lows. But one of the big things for me is I like to keep it as honest and as open as possible and share that good, but share the bad too. And for me, by being able to have that platform to share the difficult times, the more challenging sides of farming, that's what gives me support and encourages me to keep sharing it, because other farmers message and say, I really appreciate you have shared this, or you've highlighted this because I've had an equally bad day or an equally bad week, or this is the experience that we're having because of whatever it might be, if it's weather related or if it's illness related or anything. And I think that's what helps me along as well, is knowing that I'm not alone in it by being able to share that, but also allowing other people to see that they're not alone. So it's a really important platform for me in both terms, to be able to share the positive and the educational side of things, but personally the sadder times, the trickier days, the hard moments that we know farming has.
I'm sure in some of those days you might not feel like sharing at all, but it sounds like it does bring you a lot of connection. And there might be people that criticize social media for, like, almost being disconnected. You're distancing yourself. You said earlier about people feeling free to comment easier on social media for things they would never say to your face because they feel like they've got that guard up. But it sounds like for you, it's the opposite. It's putting that guard down to let people connect with you.
Yeah, definitely. And I've found a lot of comfort in that, particularly over the last couple of years when, we've had a really terrible time personally with losing mum. That's allowed me to be able to be open and honest with people. And as you say, people connect with you on a more personal level then, because they can understand why you're maybe not as chatty or not as happy, or if things are maybe getting down to you a bit more, because they understand the whole picture. And I'm not saying that everyone should share everything, absolutely not, because there's a lot of things that people aren't comfortable with sharing, or there's a line where people just don't like it, and that's absolutely fine. But for me, I enjoy that sort of, that bubble, I guess, the platform of support for me. So I think by being so open and honest and sharing why, sharing personal things that are going on, people understand, why you maybe aren't online as much, or why you maybe aren't as chatty, or as happy as you might seem. I'm absolutely not saying that you should share everything and anything if you don't feel comfortable. That's obviously, everyone's different. But for me, it's having that support of people who have potentially been through similar, or just understand why you're maybe not, the same as you were yesterday. And I think it's giving people a whole picture. And at the end of the day, we're all human. We all unfortunately go through really sad times in life, but we also go through really happy times. So it's about sharing that whole picture. And as I say, that my platforms are my sort of support. And I really appreciate everyone just being so supportive and so engaging, and just being there with advice when sometimes it's just, you just need a wee pick me up.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for your loss. That must have been incredibly difficult, especially in a farming family where you're living and working together as well. That's, the loss is even harder felt because you're all working together. So I'm sorry for that. And it sounds like, social media has been something to help support you through that. So that's always nice
Definitely.
to hear that you had that support network. And people look for that support in different ways. Some people would withdraw from being online and prefer to be, in on themselves, but it sounds like for you, reaching out to others was bringing you comfort. And talking about some of the happier days, has there been a particular day on the farm that has been a real highlight for you?
Oh, there's a lot of good days, to be fair. Very fortunate that the good days outweigh the bad. For sure. One of my favorite times of year is definitely lambing.
Okay.
I just love being able to, see new stock come onto the farm, help them into the world, watch them grow up, be part of their life, and know exactly what's gone into that, is what makes me really proud, to be honest. So I think there's probably not one specific day, but there's lots of good days that we have.
Yeah, I think that's important, to find the joy in the little things in life as well. And in a farming business where you're busy and doing a lot of physical labor and out and about long hours, it's sometimes hard to notice just how much joy there is in the little things and the routine and the mundane. That sounds like you've got a good outlook on it. If you could give one piece of advice to a young person thinking about a career in agriculture, not necessarily in social media, but just a career in agriculture, what piece of advice would you give them?
I would say just get every opportunity you can. Just get out there, learn as much as you can, volunteer as much as you can, go and help your neighbours, or help out at local marts, or whatever it might be. Just get out there. As I say, back yourself. Just have confidence in yourself, your decisions, and know that your voice and what you want to do matters, and there's a place, regardless of what sort of sector in agriculture that might be. But just get out there and gain as much experience as you can.
I think that's excellent advice for a lot of people getting into farming, whether they're from a farming family or not. The temptation is just to try and find a job and knuckle down. But I think what you've done, going off to college and then, traveling a little bit, even if it's just for a month or so, just gives you that different experience. And even just going to work for a neighbour, as you say, it just gives you some experience out with your own family farm, or, what you're used to. So I think that's great advice.
Definitely.
You don't like the term influencer, and I was trying to say it with it in inverted commas earlier. It's a bit of a triggering word for some people, isn't it? When you think about people trying to sell you something, or, trying to influence you to do something. But if you could influence your followers to do or think something, what would it be?
It would just be to just back farmers, back British farmers, and if you can, support local, shop local. I would just think, like, I would like to think that people appreciate the hard work that we do, appreciate the products that we produce, and appreciate the welfare that goes into the animals and how much care and attention we put towards our animals. Like, we would put our animals above and beyond anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at the end of the day, they come first for us. They are our priority. Yes, we're running a business at the end of the day, but that doesn't mean that we don't care. That doesn't mean that we don't want the best for our stock at the end of the day. And I just hope that for people that watch my content, that it's encouraging and it's engaging, and hopefully it's inspiring them to, you know, go ahead and smash their goals and live the life that they want to live and achieve what they want to achieve. Because again, like, you know, the last 2 years have taught me anything, it's taught me that life is extremely short and it can literally change in a flash. So just, you know, do things that make you happy, do things that make you proud, but do it for you. Don't be doing it to please anyone else. I think is important, as well as, you know, do what makes you happy.
I think that's a fantastic point to end the podcast on, Nicola. Some lovely words of wisdom there. For anyone that wants to find you and follow you on social media, Nicola, what are your handles?
Yep, thank you very much. So I am on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube as Livestock_FarmHER.
And I just want to say a big thank you for taking the time to speak to me today.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Agri Culture. If you'd like to find out more about Nicola, follow her social channels, or watch her YouTube videos, you can find links in the show notes. This episode was presented by me, Mary Jane Laurie, produced by Kerry Hammond, and edited by Cameron Walk in association with the Scottish Government.
The Farm Advisory Service Podcast. Audio advice on livestock, crops and soils, environment, rural business, and more. Brought to you in association with the Scottish Government.